Hey, welcome into episode 2 of the UP Power podcast with Kevin McNulty and Keegan Cooper. We'll flip things as opposed to what we did last week, starting with all the high school action and getting into the pros, the Lions and the Packers toward the end of it. That's the story this week. Man, the NFC North, how about that? The only division with two teams still alive in the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, it was just, when you look at both of those games, just performances both ways. I mean, nobody expected the Packers to go out and have a performance like they did.
Unbelievable.
And maybe some people expected Dallas to dwindle in the playoffs, Kevin. But, I mean, when we look at it, Jordan Love, the highest QB rating in Packers playoffs history, 16 of 21, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, franchise quarterback, all-star quarterback, he's going the right direction for the Packers in the playoffs, Kevin.
I mean, he's already there, yeah. We'll start with Packers and then get to the Lions, which was the nightcap on Sunday, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, the Packers showed up in a big way. Jordan Love, his numbers almost identical. Just a difference of 2 yards between him and C.J. Stroud, of course, two first-year starters. Jordan Love, been in Green Bay for a couple of years. C.J. Stroud, a true rookie. He's 21 years old. What he did against Cleveland was pretty amazing. But Jordan Love, 16 for 21, 272 yards. I think Stroud had 274. That was the difference. 3 touchdowns, 99.9 quarterback rating, and a total rating of 157.2, which was also identical to what Stroud's was. It was pretty amazing. 3 touchdowns through the air with Love, 3 touchdowns on the ground through Aaron Jones. I think everyone forgot about Aaron Jones when he was injured this year. He's one of the best backs in the league. Obviously, as one of the 8 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs, he's a big part of their offense as well. 21 carries for 118 yards, and of course those 3 touchdowns. Jones was incredible too.
I think he was the silent killer, if you will, in this game. I mean, 3 touchdowns and he was there, but like you said, Kevin, I think people forgot about him while he was injured throughout the this season, and then now that he's back and looking good going into the playoffs, all signs point to Green Bay being happy with him being on the field.
Yeah, and that one touchdown that Love had to Musgrave, that was a play that they ran in week 1 against the Bears where he got that wide open too. They kept it until the playoffs to run that exact same play again where Musgrave ends up with a touchdown again in Cowboy Stadium. The Packers now have more wins in the playoffs at AT&T Stadium than the Cowboys do. The Cowboys, and now the conversation in Dallas might be, is Mike McCarthy back as the head coach when you have Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel lurking out there? I think it's really hilarious that Dak ended up throwing for over 400 yards in this game because it was all garbage time. They put up 32 points in the end, but of course the 6 touchdowns and 2 field goals for the Packers, putting up 48 points in the NFL playoffs. Cowboys defense isn't a joke either. Of course, they're known for getting takeaways, and then Micah Parsons, probably him and TJ Watt, the 2 best pass rushers in the league. The Packers didn't care about any of that. They played with poise, and of course, it's been talked about numerous times, especially on the telecast, that they're the youngest playoff team essentially ever. With how young they are, playing loose. It's fun to watch.
It is fun to watch, and Jordan Love, first-year starter for Packers, didn't look like a first-year starter putting up the numbers that he did in the game that he had. He looked like somebody that had been there, in the starting role for a couple of years, and people were like, well, no, it's a first-year starter, and he is, but he'd been behind, Rodgers when Rodgers was there.
A Hall of Famer.
And learned the system and was able to learn behind somebody who's done it at the, the biggest moments, and Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love's relationship, it's strengthened all season, and he's their guy, and it's good for the Packers to see him having those performances because there was some question in the middle, late season, some of those games, Kevin, of is Jordan Love going to be the Packers guy?
When people weren't being very patient and, trying to figure out if this thing was going to work with this young of a team, well, it has. They're moving on to the divisional round. They have to go play San Francisco in Santa Clara. Will be definitely a challenge because that was the best team in the NFC all season long. Are they beatable? Yeah, I would say why not?
Yeah.
If the Packers show up like they did in Dallas, again, they've already won a road game, the first 7 seed to ever win in the NFL playoffs. Of course, this is the 3rd year of it. But still, something to be said about the Packers going on the road. Cowboys hadn't lost at home all season in front of 80,000 Cowboys fans. Man, that was pretty sweet for Packers fans.
No, and you mentioned not losing at home. The 49ers have won the last 16 straight at home.
Yep.
So that's going to play a factor. But like you said, can the Packers come out? Can they make the plays they need early? Can they jump on? Let's say that they get the ball first. Can they go down and score and get on the board and get their offense flowing and then let the defense do what it does? I mean, look what they did against the Cowboys. 2 picks. Darnell Savage, that was savagery. 64 yards for the pick 6 and the return. It's going to be interesting come Saturday.
Yeah, and I think the defense will need another 2 takeaways because you're not. Packers defense was the question mark pretty much most of the season. They're not going to hold San Francisco to under 20 points if we're being real.
Yeah.
But if they force Brock Purdy to make a couple interceptions or they pick up a fumble here and there, then it's a completely different game. We'll see what happens. Pressure's on 49ers.
Pressure's on the 49ers.
This is their year. Given what happened in the NFC Championship game last year, that's definitely a bad taste in their mouths, and they think they're Super Bowl caliber, which they totally are, but Packers are just playing football. So we'll see what happens. Let's get into Lions-Rams, the only really close game throughout the entirety of Super Wildcard Weekend, which became 6 games spread over 3 days when Buffalo's game was moved to Monday, which was fun to watch as well out there in the snow. Lions would have been playing in the snow if they played outdoors, but they were warm and toasty inside Ford Field, as was I, and I was thankful after being out there at 6 o'clock for really only 20 minutes. Nose was running. You saw how red my face was. I was serious when I said, Keegan, I got to get inside and get warm. I feel for our friends at WILX in Lansing who did a 1-hour pregame show outside the stadium as well. So Joey Ellis and Seth Wells, we're thinking of you, and hopefully you have warmed up at this point. But there's so much to be said about what they were able to do. And I'll start here. Why stop now? Why not keep the train rolling with the Bucs coming to town this weekend?
Exactly. Why not? The Detroit Lions have done things this season and this year that have not happened in a very long time. So when you're hot, you're hot. And the Detroit Lions are firing on all cylinders right now. And when you get into the game against the Rams, a lot of different storylines in there. Jared Goff playing his old team, Matthew Stafford playing his old team, back at Ford Field, in the wild card game of the NFC. And I mean, you were watching that game, the atmosphere, and Dan Campbell talked about it in his post game. It's been the seats
it was
have been
leveled
filled.
up.
Yeah,
it was leveled up. I'll speak about that for a minute, and I think this is where Lions fans will agree with me that it's their mentality. Why not keep winning games? Why not go to the Super Bowl? Because this team certainly has it in them. Yes, 100%. Everyone, watching the game on Sunday Night Football, Mike Tirico's there, Chris Collinsworth is there. But the feeling I got from the fans, yes, we're excited to finally have a playoff game here. And when it was all said and done, yes, we're excited that we finally won a playoff game and we're moving on to the divisional round. But it felt like the fans in there knew they should win this game if they play the way they ended up playing, and they did. And that's how it turned out. Of course, they were excited to be in that situation, but, Lions fans know football. They know ball. They know they've watched a lot of bad ball over the years, and that was the feeling I got. As far as the Stafford-Goff storylines, the booing of Stafford, I think, was overblown because they were booing the entire Rams team as they were coming onto the field. The Lions fans generally appreciate Matthew Stafford for all he did for 10-plus years in Detroit. Matthew Stafford didn't appreciate it because I don't know if you saw during his post-game press conference, I was in the room, he was asked, Sean McVay was happy for Jared Goff in his post-game press conference. He said that. He was happy for his former quarterback now, winning playoff games again, as he did in L.A., but now for the Lions. Sean McVay said he was happy for him. So Stafford was asked, are you happy for Detroit? And he said he was happy for the players. So he didn't appreciate the boos very much.
Yeah, and I think if you're...
Which you understand, too.
Yeah, you're a professional athlete. You don't want to get booed. I didn't want to get booed, playing high school or college ball. And a professional athlete on the biggest stage, you don't want to get booed either.
No. I think it also makes sense that Lions fans were booing the opponent.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was that big of a deal. This weekend with Tampa Bay, there's not as many storylines. They did play in Week 6. The Lions went down to Tampa and won. Of course, this one will be in Ford Field. 65,000 screaming Lions fans in Honolulu blue will be tough for Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. But they're playing just as good as anyone that's still in it, winning 6 out of their last 7 games. And, say what you will about Philadelphia. They went out and won a playoff game very handily. Which the Lions can't necessarily say. So a big opportunity in front of them. Real quick, let's get into the game itself. It was a shootout in the first half.
Shootout in the first half. Very close, kind of back and forth, not knowing who's going to take the lead into halftime. And then Lions finally get it down the stretch and edge it out. But really, that game could have gone either way.
Yeah, and the Lions, before halftime, would have had a chance to add to their total going into halftime, which was 21 points, if not for awful false start call on Taylor Decker, of all people. Taylor Decker gets called for a false start when it was clearly Los Angeles that was offsides. They didn't end up with any points. That was their first punt of the game. The Rams punted to close out the half. But, I was putting together our highlights that were going to go on at 11, and then, the third quarter ended. I was still working on it, and there were only 2 field goals. I'm like, okay, we'll give all the time to the first half, and it worked out that way. That there were only 9 points scored in the second half.
Yeah.
The defense showed up. Both teams made great adjustments to their defenses, and I think, it's the NFL playoffs. Even if it's a wild card round, you have great coaches. Sean McVay is a terrific coach. They made the adjustments that Lions were not able to move the ball the way they were in the first half after they came out of halftime, but they did enough. No turnovers in the game for either team, but that was really important for Jared Goff. He had stretches this season where he was fumbling the ball a lot.
Fumbling the ball, couldn't handle it, dropping it, turning it over, threw a couple interceptions.
None of that. It never even felt like that was on the table on Sunday.
No.
So 24-23, they hang on. A lot of people were talking about McVay's decision to punt with just over 4 minutes remaining. They never got the ball back. Probably wasn't the right call. It was a 4th and long in their own territory. It would have been a gamble to go for it, but if he knew that he wasn't going to get the ball back, he definitely would have gone for it on that 4th down. So they punted away. One completion, Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle.
That's it.
Was pretty poetic, and I turn over about a minute 50 left on the clock when they completed that pass, and looked over to Seth, and I'm like, that's it, right? They only had 1 timeout. Should say they had to burn 2 timeouts because it was so loud in there, and it really was that loud in there. I tweeted that I had the alert on my Apple Watch that the sound levels were too high. I was going to end up with temporary hearing loss. No one cared. I bet 1 billion people got that alert on their Apple Watch. Keep screaming, man. It was awesome. It was so great. Good for Detroit, but like I said, keep it rolling.
Keep it rolling, and Jared Goff, keep doing the things you need to do. Sam Laporta, get healthy. He was, that injury that
he
took
still
him
ends
down.
up with a touchdown.
Still ends up with a touchdown, isn't playing. So another full week for him to kind of recover, because I think down the stretch, especially in this game coming up, he is going to have a big performance.
Yeah, so Laporta, 3 catches for 14 yards, but the important thing was the touchdown on 4th down when everyone knew Dan Campbell was going to go for it, and I loved it. He still went for it, and the Lions are moving on. Jared Goff loves Detroit. Detroit loves Jared Goff. They love this team. It's a really, really talented team, especially when the defense steps up. the way they did in the second half. Puka Nacua was unbelievable. He is so talented. You can't 9 catches, 181 yards, and of course that 50-yard touchdown. So we'll close the book on the Lions and the Packers for now. Of course, we'll be talking about them a lot. How fortunate are we to have the two teams that everyone roots for in the UP?
And we get to see them not only in the first round of the playoffs, but also in the second round of the playoffs. It means we get to talk more football, Kevin.
And what are the odds they meet in the NFC Championship game at Ford Field? That might be getting ahead of ourselves. Let's bring it back here to the UP. Flip over to NMU and Tech in action this past week. And we have to start with NMU basketball, both the women's and men's team. Let's start on Thursday. What a crazy day that was. Starting with the women, Michaela Kuhn, 9 points away from the all-time scoring mark in program history for the Wildcats. Of course, she was going to get there. She averages 17 a game, and she got there in the third quarter. What a moment for Michaela Kuhn. And I mentioned this on Thursday. She came back to reach milestones like that, not only personally, but team milestones. We'll see what they can do in March. But that was a big moment for Kuhn, one of the best players, if not the best player in program history.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Michaela Kuhn, when you look at her, she's going to score the basketball. And Coach Casey Townsend said, we want her to get there. We know she's going to get there, and she just has to let it come naturally. And she did. She played a great game, still found her teammates, still got her points, and still gets to break the record. And it'll be exciting to see for the rest of the season how high she bumps up that all-time scoring record. And for the team, for the NMU women's basketball team, playing some pretty good basketball as of late, it's exciting to see that not just Michaela is scoring, but you've got a lot of the other players now stepping up and putting points on the board. And, when everybody scores, it makes your whole offense a little bit easier.
Yeah, J.C. Weisbrod, one of those players that has stepped up for the Cats. Of course, we'll talk about another Weisbrod here in a second. But when you look at NMU's weekend, Thursday to Saturday, obviously, they get the win on Thursday over Lake State pretty easily. That Ferris State game, you were at one of the best teams in the country, ranked 11th coming in, I believe. What did you see in that game?
I think, the Wildcats are playing with them for a little bit, but Ferris State, when you're going up against teams that are, let's say top 15 in the nation, you have to limit the mistakes, and open shots have to go in and down the stretch. Ferris shot a lot of free throws because Northern trying to stop the clock, good strategy, but when you foul late in the game and Ferris goes, oh gosh, I don't know, they probably made 15, 17 free throws late in the game.
Yeah.
That's what pushed the score up really in the end. It wasn't that the Bulldogs are scoring more than Wildcats. It's that Northern had to stop the clock so they could stay close, and Ferris steps up and knocks down their free throws. And when you get up against teams like that, you have to play almost as perfect as you can. I mean, we look at it when NMU went up against Grand Valley State just a couple weeks ago. You look at the first half, 32-31, the score. Second half, some mistakes, some open shots not going in, and that was able to allow Grand Valley to get up to that 17-point lead and ultimately take the win. But for Northern Michigan women's basketball, I think the key is to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Limit maybe some of those turnovers that they see, and the shots have been falling this year, and they're going to continue to fall, so keep taking those shots, be aggressive. I think I've seen it, Michaela Kuhn getting to the rim a lot, getting to the free throw line, which against certain teams, if you can get them in foul trouble early, or you get the team fouls up, then you're going to the free throw line late in the game instead of them.
Yeah, we'll see. I put this out on Friday that the NMU men's and women's team were combined 13-1 since December 1st, and with that loss and the men's team winning, which we'll get to now, they're 14-2 since December 1st. So still pretty good for both teams. Men's team Thursday night, I was there. Max Weisbrod. So the Cats did not play their best game. I think Matt Makerzak would admit that, especially in the first half. They trailed at halftime. Just trying to figure things out. And Dylan Keel is one of the best players in the GLIAC. We know that. He's going through a little bit of a rut trying to find himself now into conference play because he was dominant in non-conference. But what Macrazek's team does is they find a way to work around some of those things. And I referenced to you a couple of times, Max Weisbrod, obviously Conference Player of the Week this week, no surprise. But there was a game, I believe it was against Northwood, where they won a tight game when they were still playing in the PEEF, and Weisbrod only had 5 points, but he was fired up for his guys that they got the win. After that one went final, I think that shows what kind of team they are, that they don't rely on any singular guy. And on Thursday, they definitely did rely on Weisbrod. So, I mean, that was an unbelievable final couple of minutes that they it was a 10, 11-point lead for Lake State, under 4 minutes to go. 3-point game, 70-67. Weisbrod comes down the floor just off the dribble, 3 from the top of the key, gets it to go. We're tied at 70. It was a terrible call that sent the Lakers to the free throw line at the other end of the court. They make 1 and 2, so it's 71-70. Initially, when Weisbrod hit the buzzer beater, I thought it was a 3, but didn't need a 3. It was only a 1-point game. So, what Macrazek drew up was inbound to Weisbrod and see if he has the look underneath, because they could have gone 4-2 if he went down to Dylan. But, talking to Max after the game, he gave him a little shake. 1 dribble, cut back, off the bank. It was pretty awesome. And Weisbrod, final line, 9 for 14 on Thursday, 25 points, 6 for 9 from three-point land. You can't ask for much more. And Dylan Keel adding 22 points and 5 rebounds. That was a team win.
Yeah, that was a team win, Kevin. And you look at NMU men's all season. Maybe it's this guy here this game. Maybe it's this guy here this game. Max Weisbrod, Dylan Keel, always going to be in the probably top scorers category when you look at any game across the board. But like you said, when that game where Weisbrod only had 5 points against Northwood, being fired up for your team because you won. And I think that just shows how close that group of guys are, and how they continue to fight and battle in those games. Because listen, you're GLIAC champions, from last year. Every team that you play from now until the season is done is going to give you the best 40 minutes of basketball that they have. They're going to throw everything they have at you, because you go from maybe being an underdog program a couple of years ago to now being top dog.
Yeah.
To now being the team that everybody wants to beat, to being the team that everybody wants to be. And that's tough sometimes.
Almost happened overnight,
yeah.
Where, they come into last year not necessarily expected to win the GLIAC. They do it. They win the GLIAC tournament, move on in the NCAA tournament, and now here they are, like you said, top dog, and right there with them is Ferris State, who they took down on Saturday. Weisbrod coming up big again.
Yeah, and these games down the stretch, you look at some of these wins, it's making the little plays or doing the little things in the last 2 minutes, the last minute, sometimes even the last 30 seconds, to get those wins. They beat Ferris, they beat in Grand Valley, they've got Purdue Northwest and Parkside coming up this weekend. Both teams that are in their conference, and GLIAC play the rest of the way, but those teams are going to come out and give it the best 40 minutes of basketball. You're also on the road this week too, so you're not playing in front of your home fans. You're not playing on your home court. There's a lot of different factors that go into these games coming up, and the rest of the season. Playing at home and getting those wins, especially beating a ranked opponent, Ferris State. All signs point to yes, but it's can we now continue this on the road? And
well, they did it 2 weekends ago. At Grand Valley and Davenport, 2 more wins. Of course, they've won 9 in a row. So why not?
Why not? I think that's a good thing to sum up. Yeah.
And when they were going through some stuff, losing earlier in the season, non-conference, they still started 2-0 in the GLIAC, and I think we said to each other, like, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
They're still playing in their practice gym. It's non-conference. Travel's weird. Scheduling's weird at the end of that semester. Now they're in a rhythm. Thursday, Saturday, we're ready to go, even if we're traveling. They're not going to Texas like they did early in the year.
Yeah.
They're just driving down to Kenosha this weekend and then to take on Purdue Northwest and Hammond. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. 9 in a row, like I said, if they can keep it rolling. Man, we're looking at a fun team to cover in March for a second straight year. Let's flip over to the Tech men's team. They can't really catch a break.
No, they
because
can't.
Ferris State came to town on Thursday, 69-68 final score. Of course, like we mentioned, Ferris is a fantastic team and just heartbreaking, man.
Yeah, and
down the stretch, and that's not far from the first time that's happened to the Huskies this year.
And it may have been the fact that, Ferris plays Northern and loses and maybe gets a fire lit under him and then, goes up and matches up with Tech too. And it feels like Michigan Tech, looking at the men's team right now, that they're just not finding the puzzle pieces that are fitting together right now. They have some spurts where they look really good. And then they have some spurts where they look not so good, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that happens when you have this talented guy in Marcus Tomaszek, who is one of the scoring leaders in Division II right now. Where Josh Bittner talked about balance last week, and I think they got a little bit of that. Goretzka ended up with 18 against Ferris. Tomaszek led the way with 20. And Josh Terrain, I think, is a big piece for them because he's sort of a, guard forward, playing 3-4 around there. And he added 17 points and had 6 rebounds against Ferris as well. But to close out the game, I think, they did that against Winona, a ranked team earlier in the year, a 1-point game. That had to feel good, and they definitely learned a lot from that. But, when it came to closing out the Bulldogs on Thursday, they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I think they're right there. And, I know Josh Bittner talked about, like you said, balance. It's tough sometimes when you have a guy like Marcus Tomaszek who if you need to on any given night could probably go out and get 35 for you.
But their opponent knows that as well.
Their opponent knows that as well. And, I mean, we've talked about that for some teams on the high school level this year. When you have that one guy, the other team knows. Mm-hmm. And they know well before, you play them because they're watching film and they're doing that. So it's now we have to have other guys step up and also score. We saw that in the Ferris game. It didn't go their way in the end, but good things. Now can they continue that with these opponents the rest of the season?
I wouldn't advise anyone to write off the Michigan Tech Huskies.
No,
because
not at all.
Talking to Bittner throughout this season, there's a lot of parallels from last season to this season where they finished on a great high note in the GLIAC tournament where they advanced to the title game and lost to Northern. He's mentioned how this team is in a way better spot than they were even last year when that did happen in March. So it's a matter of turning it on here as we approach, we're in mid-January, it's January 16th, which is crazy. About 6-7 weeks remaining in the season, but I don't doubt that they can turn it on and start winning some of those games like when Ferris was in town on Thursday. Of course, they also have Parkside and Purdue Northwest this week on the road. We'll see if they can figure it out. I have faith that they can. Pete Calcaterra played great in that Ferris game as well. So we'll see what happens with the Huskies men's team. Let's flip it over to the women now. They suffer a loss against Ferris State on Thursday, number 11 in the country, an 8-point loss. 12 points, 66-54. They lost that. And then they come around back on Saturday, Lake State team that they should have beaten, and they handled business. More importantly, they put 75 points on the board, which at times this season offense has been hard to come by for Sam Clayton's team. Putting up 75 points, no matter who your opponent is, that's got to be a big confidence boost.
It is, and I know Sam Clayton talked about it today in her press conference, that she was excited and pleased with the response that they had from the Ferris game to the next one. You play a close game against a ranked team and it doesn't go your way, but then can you respond on the weekend and, pick up some points for conference, get a win, and putting 75 points on the board that's a good feeling to have, a lot of members of the team contributing to that, because 75 points it's not something you see a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a mark for Michigan Tech that they're aiming to reach every game, but if you're scoring 75 points in a conference game, you're going to win most of those.
Yeah.
So if they keep the offense trending the way it was, they shot 37% from the field, 21 for 57. Pretty solid. They're 4 for 22 from three-point land, so that's not even great, but they got 22 threes up, landed 4 of them. I think a big point, I talked to Sam Clayton about this last week, Alyssa Wypick kind of burst on the scene in non-conference play, still figuring out when, you get these tough conference games, which we talked about with Dylan Keel. But Wypick's a freshman, okay? She dropped 14 in that Lake State game, so it'll be good to get her going a little bit again, coming off the bench as she has been past couple weeks.
Yeah, get her some minutes, and as a freshman, playing in these games that do matter. Every conference game matters, and if she's able to contribute, that takes some pressure off of some of those other scores that they have. I know we talk about Isabella Lenz, who's kind of an all-around player, and Sam Clayton talked about that too. Yes, she scores the basketball, but if you watched even these last 2 games, some of the passes that she was making were just, finding her teammates when I didn't even think that they were open, and she was able to get them the ball and allow them to score, and that's that's what you like to see in a player that can score the basketball, but also can facilitate and help your offense kind of flow throughout the game.
Yeah, Sarah Dax underneath, too, is a big piece of what they do. One of their leading scorers on Saturday as well, and she plays great defense. So that's helpful for the Tech women. All 4 teams this coming weekend taking on Parkside and Purdue Northwest. Let's get into hockey. This might be a little rough for Tech and Northern this weekend. Let's start with Tech on the road at St. Thomas, the team in second in the CCHA. Tech coming in to the series in third, and they dropped 2 on the road at St. Thomas, something they couldn't really afford when you thought momentum was really trending in their direction. When you look at the second half of November, and then, of course, the win in the GLI, where you go to a shootout and beat Michigan State, which I wouldn't be shocked is playing in the Frozen Four in the spring. It felt like that all kind of dispersed by the time they went on to take on the Tommies in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think you're, what I want to quote head coach of NMU women's soccer, John Sandoval. You can't let your highs get too high and your lows get too low, and I think maybe Michigan Tech hockey coming off the GLI was up here and was still up here, and then St. Thomas said, okay, we're going to bring you back down to, the normal level, and that it's tough because you see them play that well in the GLI and do those things, and you expect it to continue, and then it doesn't. Going up against a good St. Thomas team, the Tommies are a good
a team you want to say we're better than you. We were picked first in the conference preseason. They didn't quite play like it. I think they need Arvid Kateroth back. Obviously, that guy's got a C on his sweater. Yeah. Joe Shawn called him the heartbeat of the team. We'll see if that's on the table for Bemidji, the number 1 team in the conference. Going into this weekend, I actually haven't checked the standings from this past weekend, but Bemidji, another team that's ahead of you in the CCHA, having Kateroth back would be huge. Haven't gotten a status update on him. They had Koski Purdy back from juniors this past weekend in Minnesota. Pretty quiet. He met them in Minnesota, so he wasn't even on the ice practicing with them. Yeah. So it makes sense that it might take a little time for him to get back into it.
One point, though, that I will say, Kyle Kukkonen gets his first goal of the season. Huge. Get him going, get him scoring. He's on the line with Austin Swankler, too. If that line gets going, behind the first 2, I believe that they're the second or third line. If that line gets going,
it's Swankler, Mosley, and Isaac Gordon. Yeah. So Kooks on a different line. But regardless,
Get him going.
Huge. The freshman of the year in the conference had 18 last year. He's probably the most talented player in the roster. So that was definitely a positive.
And
to see that.
Don't be surprised if he bumps up those numbers here in the second half of the season. And for Michigan Tech, I think they're one solid of every game is if you have Blake Pietola in the net, you're going to be good there. But teams now, and we've seen it, are finding ways to, obscure his visibility and get shots, in the net or on the net and, basically pelt him with as many shots as they can. And eventually, some are going to find their way in.
Yeah, they don't want to be playing from behind either. And, moral of the story, you can't go a weekend without points this time of year.
You cannot.
Like they just did. And like Northern did, letting the Capo Cup slip from their fingertips, that had to be pretty terrible feeling on Saturday to watch Lake State hold up that Capo Cup after he dominated those two games, were ahead in goals. Of course, that's how the Capo Cup's decided as total goals. So they were 3 goals ahead going into this weekend. Even if they went 1-1 in the record, they probably would have been fine. It didn't work out that way. They lose 5-1, 5-2 Friday, Saturday. What went wrong?
I mean, it's just, and I talked to Grant Patoli, last week before they were getting ready for these games. He said, we're going in with the intention that we're bringing this home. And I think
they should have, because they had a 3-goal lead.
They should have a 3-goal lead, and I think things just, Lake Superior State said, okay, we kind of got our backs against the wall, and we either come out and play, and we put it on them. And I think when you get 1, and then you get 2, and then you get 3, Lake Superior State was playing very good hockey and was finding the back of the net. And I think also for Northern, you've got Benny and Charlie flopping back and forth in between the net. And I think that for Northern right now is a tough thing, is goalie consistency, because it hasn't been there, because we've seen them both kind of switch off and on. Both phenomenal players, both have the ability, but it's at what point are we going to see it? Because some games we see it, and some games we don't, Kevin.
Well, that's a luxury that Tech has, that Northern just no one can touch where Blake Pietola is and what he's done in his career. So, figuring out the goaltending situation, again, needs to happen soon. It's mid-January now, where you're staring down the barrel of a big uphill climb heading into the CCHA tournament. Probably where they're at now will end up playing on the road in the CCHA. And look, you got a team in St. Thomas coming to Marquette next weekend, who obviously just took care of Tech, who's ahead of Northern in the standings. So points are huge. And both teams went without points this weekend, which is rough.
It hurts. And I think for Northern especially, you've got to find a way to score more than 1 or 2 goals a game to win.
Yeah.
You've got to do that. You've got to find a way to do that. And it's not easy. It's tough. But especially against these opponents. I mean, look at Lake Superior State, 10 goals, 2 games. St. Thomas scored 4 and then 4 and then 4 against Michigan Tech.
4 and 3.
4 and 3, so 7.
7 on the weekend, yeah. And I think that was something Northern, coming off the holiday break, was hoping to shore up in their exhibition with Tech. Tech didn't value that as much, and Grant Patoli understood why. They had played 2 very competitive games, 2 overtime games in the GLI just about 10 days prior. So Tech didn't give them, everything they had, obviously, when they came to Marquette last week. When there's no Pietolas on the ice, you're not getting Tech's best shot. And those 7 goals they put up in that exhibition didn't really mean much. And it didn't translate to results this weekend because they only scored 3 times. High school. You ready to flip the page?
Ooh, yeah. Let's flip the page. College gone. The North-South Hockey Showcase, Kevin.
Yeah.
In Traverse City.
Great event.
Great event. Good to see teams from the UP
and good hockey,
and downstate playing against each other. I mean, we've got some really good high school hockey teams up here in the UP this season. And
Marquette and Houghton notably.
Marquette and Houghton. Kingsford, Eski playing some pretty good hockey too here and there. Negaunee occasionally sprinkling in a good game. The Miners.
Hey, a couple wins they put up in December, so yeah.
But when
good hockey all around, man.
Yeah, and when we look at North-South Hockey Showcase, 3 UP teams played on the last day. 3 overtime games.
Yeah.
3 overtime games. The UP takes 2 of them. 2 out of the 3. Kingsford falls. That one a tough one, 4-3 in the last seconds of overtime. But, man. Marquette hockey is looking good.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 in a row after that win on Saturday. Actually, I have it up right here on MHSAA. Let's go one by one and count. They beat Escanaba. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, my God. Might be in the teens now after this weekend.
A little more than 10 now.
And beating Howell, it's a good program, but there's a couple of Pietelas that played for Howell. So that overtime win, man, good for them. Hope to see more of them this weekend. They have Negaunee tonight, actually. We'll see if Marquette keeps it rolling in Houghton. Man.
The Gremlins, man, they score the puck.
Mm-hmm.
And unselfish play, too. It doesn't matter who scores. You look at some of the stat lines. Sometimes it's 1 guy. Sometimes it's 2. Sometimes it's 6. They had people, when they scored 10 goals the other day, had 6 guys on the ice that scored in that game. And they are, what more could you expect from the birthplace of professional hockey than the Houghton Gremlins high school hockey team to be just fantastic all the time and fun to watch too and fun to cover, and those guys love to play, and I think that's something that can be said for kind of all the UP hockey teams is they love to play, and I think that's a big part of finding success.
Brother Rice, obviously it's private Catholic school in the Detroit area. They have athletes from all over Metro Detroit, and they came up to Houghton and lost 4-3. To a great Houghton team. Obviously, they're still undefeated on the season. We'll see if they keep it rolling here. Got about a month left in the season. Let us mark our calendars now. February 16th, Houghton, Marquette. That should be a lot of fun. If the Gremlins keep it rolling, man, a lot of fun to watch them play hockey. North-South Showcase in Traverse City was great. Escanaba played pretty well, too. Nolan Bank, the quarterback, he looks pretty good on skates, man.
Looks pretty good on the ice.
Yeah, so good for Eski as well. Great weekend of hockey at the high school level and college level. The 2 teams we covered, not so much. Basketball,
the UP
Let's wrap
poll.
it up with the UP poll. I'll just read it out and we'll get into some of these teams. And unfortunately, in Divisions 1 through 3, I say it is fortunate in general, but unfortunately, Iron Mountain and Kingsford, number 1 and number 2, play tonight. So we don't know the outcome of this game. You probably know the outcome of this game when you're listening to this. So Iron Mountain, number 1 at 9-0. Kingsford, 10-1 and 1 loss to Marquette is number 2. Tied with Menominee at 8-1. They were supposed to play Marquette on Friday. We had a little bit of a blizzard situation.
Just a little bit of snow, if you haven't noticed outside. Well, you didn't have it at all, and now we have it. But
when it rains, it pours, or when it snows, it
blizzards.
It blizzards. Friday was crazy. And it was fun. I wish we had more games to talk about. We'll get into the games you were at, which were thoroughly entertaining. But wrapping up the poll, of course, Iron Mountain, Kingsford, Menominee. Number 4 is Marquette, 6-3, playing really good basketball. Those 3 losses were quite a few weeks ago. Jeffers at number 5, 10-1. They're also playing great ball. And 2 teams that fell from 4 and 5 last week to receiving votes and out of the poll this week, Ishpeming and Negaunee. Well, they played each other on Friday, Keegan. We'll get into the girls' game as well, but the boys' games, your impressions from the Miners, Hematites going at it.
Back to back, playing at Negaunee, Kevin.
Yeah.
And can I just say Ishpeming had a game plan coming in, and you saw it across the 4 quarters of the game, is we're going to push the pace, we're going to score inside, we're going to run with Negaunee, and we're going to see if we can beat them. Defensively, they were sound. Caden Luma had some big steals late game.
Yeah.
He also had 26 points in the game, so Negaunee, I think, was not ready for it, was not prepared. They also were not hitting shots. Gavin Saunders had kind of a tough go of it, and he's a phenomenal player, and he's going to turn it around and get going again, but he was not making shots, and Negaunee kind of as a whole was not making shots down the stretch. They were not finding the easy buckets like they normally do, and I think Ishpeming said, hey, yes, we're playing at your place, but we want you to know that we're just as good. And they showed it.
And that's huge for the Miners to be able to knock down those shots that, when I've seen them play at home, they have been throwing shots in. Marquette, they handled pretty easily a 15-point win. I would argue Marquette is a slightly different team now that they've gotten on a roll here, but Negaunee made shots in that game. Westwood came to town. Obviously, probably an underrated team in the UP just based on who they have and the sophomore and Ethan Marta and Andrew Nemi down low. Didn't really happen for Negaunee on Friday. My concern for Ishpeming going into that game was their size, and that didn't matter when, Caden Loomis put up 26 points.
Yeah, no, it didn't, and Ishpeming, I think knew, hey, we may not be able to attack the basket as much in the half-court set, but if we get in the fast break, we can attack the basket. They also shot the ball just incredibly well.
And they're going to do that too. I mentioned that about Negaunee, but it's the same story for the Hematites. Man, both the boys and girls teams showed up on Friday, sweeping the Miners. Grady Gauthier, another sophomore that we get to talk about for the next couple of years, for Ishpeming. Man, he's quick. And he sets things up for Ishpeming as well.
Yeah, an unselfish play, too, I think, from Ishpeming because they got in there and battled offensively, defensively, getting offensive rebounds, getting extra possessions late in the game, and then defensively getting those steals, getting those two. I know, too. Gauthier got one late, and Caden Luma got one late. Stealing a layup, an easy 2 points, a 4-point swing late in the game, and then after all was said and done, Ishpeming walks away with that win. I was surprised to not see them still in the top 5 after that win, but it's when you look at the top 5 teams, Kevin, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, how can you argue against Jeffers at 10-1? And the way Marquette is playing, of course, the record's still at 6-3. How do you keep them out? I'm glad, they're at least on our list after that win. Big comeback in the second half, so good for the Hematites. Let's move on to Division 4, and this one, it's
all over
it's clustered, I would say, more than Divisions 1 through 3, where you have Iron Mountain and Kingsford and Menominee, and that's really the upper echelon right now.
Yep.
It's all over the place in Division 4. St. Ignace is number 1 at 6-2. Munising 2, playing some good ball. We talked a little bit about them last week. 8-3. Pickford is tied for second at 8-1. Forest Park 2 losses this week, playing without their head coach. They are now 6-2, number 4 in our poll. Norway is 6-3 at number 5. Talked about them being a dangerous team, and Ironwood still playing pretty well at 5-3, receiving votes. So St. Ignace we don't get to watch very much based on distance, but at 6-2, certainly deserving of being atop this poll.
No, I think we don't watch the Saints that much, but
as much as we would like,
as much as we would like,
a very good team.
A very good team. But they're playing a good basketball, and I think we've seen, and we see it in Division 4. It is kind of jumbled, 6-2, 8-3, 8-1, 6-2, 6. Everyone is right there. I know we talked about Norway and Forest Park being dangerous teams. Forest Park scoring the basketball crazy all the time. Pickford as well. Munising, the Mustangs. I mean, you can't count out the Mustangs if they get on a roll.
Well, they got the big win on Thursday over Forest Park at home, 47-46, a really close game. So that kind of said to everyone in the UP, like, hey, the Mustangs are still here.
We're still here.
Playing pretty good ball. 8-3 now, looking darn good.
And it will be exciting to see. You know, all these teams in Division 4 have the ability to kind of make it and go on a run in the
Yeah, we'll
postseason.
see if there's any separation here in the next couple of weeks. Forest Park, I would expect them to get back into the swing of things. 2 really tough games. They play Kingsford, which I would probably say a little bit more talented. They only lose by 5, 57-52. That was the game where, you know, things got heated at post-game and ended up in the suspension of Forest Park's head coach. They go on to lose to Munising, but then they turn it around and win by 48 against Bark River. Now they have West Iron County, Gwynn, North Dickinson coming up. So I fully expect Forest Park to turn it on again. Just suffered back-to-back losses, which hurt the Trojans, but still a really, really talented team there.
Yeah, no, it looks good. And now, I guess, Kevin, we can move on to Division 1 through 3 girls.
Yeah, Negaunee still at number 1, 9-1 on the season. This is Divisions 1 through 3, so we'll get to Ishpeming when we talk about Division 4. They also played each other on Friday. Sault Ste. Marie is 4-2. They're at number 2. Houghton, the girls' team, is 6-3. They're number 4. Westwood is 4-3. Hasn't played that many games, but we know they're a talented team at number 4. And Bark River is tied with them at 8-1, and the Broncos, hopefully we get to watch some more of their games very soon here. They're playing great. Receiving votes is Gladstone at 5-3 and West Iron County at 4-3. Both of those teams, have talent at the top for sure. Danica Shamian for West Iron County and Lily Johnson for Gladstone. Should I read the Division 4 poll and then we'll talk about Negaunee Ishpeming? So they're still 1-1. They were 1-1 on Friday. Ishpeming in Division 4 is still 6-0. Number 1 team. St. Ignace also appears in the girls' poll at 8-1. They're number 2 in Division 4. Lakeland and Hubble 9-0 at number 3. The Lakes are playing some great basketball. Ironwood is number 4 at 9-1. Baraga and Munising tied for 5th. Vikings at 7-3. Munising Mustangs at 7-0. Uinchow Creek also receiving votes at 6-2. Negaunee Ishpeming girls. Ella Mason, arguably the best player in the UP. Hematites shut her down.
Hematites shut her down, and I think head coach Ryan Riegel for Ishpeming had a good plan. You know, I talked to him before the game, and he said, we know that Ella is going to get her points. We want to limit her opportunities as much as we can and make it tough for her to get them. If they're going to beat us, they got to beat us through everybody else. They got to allow everyone else to score. She still scored. She had 11 points, I think, on the night.
Yeah.
Not anywhere near what she normally has on a given night. And Ishpeming,
You expect 20 from her.
You expect 20.
Pretty much every
You
night.
expect 20. And Ishpeming shut her down. A little box and one, little,
I love
kind
that
of face
from Ryan
guarding
Riegel,
her, kind of not letting her have those opportunities, playing some good man-to-man basketball. And then offensively for Ishpeming, Maya Himmer. She gets my gold star of the week. I think head coach Ryan Riegel, talked to her before the game and said, hey, we need you to have a big game. You need to be an inside presence. And she was, both offensively, had 22 points in the game, but also defensively. Ishpeming had...
Well, she has more length
Yeah.
than anyone I've seen play this year.
Yeah.
We watched her play volleyball, and she's a darn good volleyball player, obviously, because she can get up.
Yeah.
And, obviously so tall, long arms, that creates havoc for a team trying to score on Ishpeming, especially if they're trying to do it through the inside. Ryan Riegel, you talked to him before that game. So impressed with, not only who he's got on the team, but how they play together. You mentioned putting the box and one on Ella Mason. I love that because I like getting creative with the defenses. I don't think I see enough zone out there. UP coaches, let's throw in a zone on one possession. Let's get fun. But the box and one on Ella Mason, it worked wonders.
Ella Mason is incredible off the dribble.
Yeah.
But if she needs to catch off screens, it's going to make it tougher. It's not that she's not going to score. She still did. She's a phenomenal player. But can we limit her chances?
You got someone on her like glue. It's obviously going to be a little tougher. So Ishpeming is 6-0, still undefeated.
Still undefeated. And I mean, they just recently played West Iron County too. I mean, that was on Monday night, Kevin, and same thing. Danica Ishpeming there.
Another great player.
But Ishpeming defensively locked her up, and other teammates are going to have to score. And then Maya Hemmett, another big game. Janessa Eagle, phenomenal player.
She played great against Hancock.
Yeah.
It ended up being a blowout win for the Hemmetites, but Janessa Eagle in that game, and then Jenna Mackey closing in on 1,000 career points.
Closing in on 1,000 career points. I mean, they just have a lot of people that can score the basketball, and it just depends on the given night. Is it Janessa Eagle? Is it Jenna Mackey? Is it going to be Maya Hemmer on the inside? And defensively, they push, if they get a defensive rebound, they're pushing the basketball. They're going to score in transition. They get up and down. I'm curious to see on any given night how many shots they put up, just because of the pace of play that they play at is a lot faster than most of the teams that you see. And I think it catches a lot of teams off guard when they get the rebound and they're beating everyone down the court and shooting layups.
Yeah, we'll see what happens for the Hemmetites. Negaunee, they'll be just fine. I will catch them tonight taking on Gwynn. Negaunee also, like Ishpeming, a pretty young team. Gretel Johnson and Kira Waterman get quite a few minutes for them, so they're still figuring some things out. Kira Waterman had a great putback in that game and made your highlights.
Yeah.
So Miners will be just fine. Ishpeming seems like a wagon right now. Lake Linden Hubble is in the same boat, and we got to wrap up. But the Lakes, I also don't really see a loss on their schedule. They take on Ironwood next Tuesday, which should be fun. Ironwood obviously standing at 9-1, so hopefully we can get out there. Emily Jokel is another one of those players who just passed 1,000 career points, and every night, it was back-to-back games. She put up 30 points. Their head coach, Jack Kumpler, called me, and he was like, yep, another 30 for Emily. Just a casual,
just a casual phone call. Yeah, she scored 30.
She had 30 points.
Every night.
Half of our points, more than half of our points.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. She's playing really, really well. So good for Lake Linden. We'll see if they keep it rolling. Munising also undefeated, along with Ishpeming and Lake Linden. So any parting thoughts this week?
We still have some undefeated teams. Be exciting to see if that carries on, through boys and girls, both Division 1 through 3 and Division 4. It's kind of grind time now. Wins matter for every level, high school, college. You can't end a weekend without securing any points for your conference or at least picking up one win.
And we're getting closer to seeing how it all shakes out come postseason time, which I know we're both excited for March. Not only because of these high school teams, a lot of great ones throughout all four divisions in high school basketball, but also the college teams that we expect to be playing their best ball come March as well. So that'll do it for this second edition of the UP Power Podcast. We appreciate you watching us on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Just make sure to subscribe to the TV6 and Fox UP YouTube channel and catch all of our TV6 content over there. And stay tuned for more high school basketball coming up on Friday. Hopefully there's no blizzard to cancel a lot of the games. And then Lions-Packers Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be another full weekend of the NFL. Thank you for joining us. For Keegan Cooper, I'm Kevin McNulty. Enjoy the rest of your week.